And so it's very important to make sure that if you are going to bring an animal into your life, that you're ready for that animal and that you can take care of them. So with that, I think the very first thing is that researching dog breeds is very important. And there are different ways that you can research dog breeds. There's all kinds of different books and websites and information out there. I would also suggest, if you can get experience at humane societies, that's also a really good way to be able to interact with different dog breeds and see what you prefer. I know when I got my dog, I have a 3-year-old golden retriever, and I knew that I loved Goldens because I had one growing up. But even though I knew that, I still wanted to do my due diligence and look through different breeds to see what was out there. And Animal Planet actually has a great website where they rank the top 100 dogs, and they rank them on all kinds of things, such as, you know, their training ability, how good they are with kids, grooming. They have all kinds of different scales, and then they rank the dogs based on that. So it's pretty interesting to actually be able to go out and look at that information, because it might spark some things that you hadn't considered before, but may be important when considering that specific breed of dog. Personal example, at my home, I have a golden retriever. My fiance has a Alaskan Malamute, which is a husky. I love her, but she is so hairy. She is the hairiest dog in the entire world. And when it is summer, we are literally vacuuming at least once a day because it's just hair overload. You cannot sit anywhere without the hair just blowing up all over. And she has been banned from our bedroom because I need one space that I can sleep and put on my clothes without having to just be covered. So that is interesting because my boyfriend, when he wanted his dog, he just said, I want a husky. I don't care, that's what I'm getting, and he purchased her before we ever met, so there's nothing I can really say about it at this point, but that would have been something to take into consideration. Next, and this kind of leads, it's kind of linked, but evaluating your lifestyle. Everyone has a different lifestyle. Some people live in apartments, some people live in homes, some people want outdoor dogs, some people have little kids. There are so many different aspects, and I think it's very important to consider those main parts of your life before deciding what dog is going to fit best into that lifestyle. I know when I was a little girl, we had a tiny Yorkie, and she was the runt of her litter, so at the most that she ever got in her life was 4 pounds. She was not a good dog to have on a 10-acre farm with 2 little kids. We wanted a dog to be rough and tumble and be able to play outside and go on walks and all kinds of things, but she never really fit into that lifestyle because she was just too little. She really needed to be with a family that maybe a couple that didn't have any kids or had older children, or there was just, I think we could have considered that a little bit better before we bought her. And another thing that people don't always think about that is important is, do you have the money to have an animal? Because pets are not cheap. And whether that means just bringing them in for their routine checkups, or if they get sick, some people have pet insurance, that's maybe not a bad idea to have. But they are expensive. My dog needs to be groomed every few months, and that is just another expense that comes into play. So it's just something to think about. Lastly is to think of, do you want a puppy or would you like an older dog? I think many times that people automatically think, oh, we want a dog for our family, and so we're going to get a puppy. But puppies can be destructive, and they can be very time-consuming. When they poop on your floor, there will be a pungent smell that you will have to deal with as you're cleaning it up off the floor. And so it just depends on where you are in your life. I don't have children, but I can imagine if I had a 3-year-old running around my house, I probably wouldn't want to bring a puppy into the mix at that specific time. So timing kind of can play into that as well. When I was in grad school, I always volunteered at the Humane Society because at my apartment I couldn't have a dog, but I wanted to be around them. So I went out anyways to play with them on a daily basis. And it was just really interesting to see all the older dogs that are there. And just because they're older doesn't necessarily mean that they are aggressive or were a bad dog. They just might not have fit in with a specific family. So consideration of those dogs is still important because they can be great companions. And also a lot of times when you get them from the Humane Society, there might be certain characteristics that they picked up or certain things that haven't worked well in previous homes, such as they can't be around cats or they can't be around kids, but usually the Humane Society will tell you that. So that's kind of nice to know. So overall, in closing, having a dog is wonderful. It absolutely enriches life, but it is important to research the breed, evaluate your lifestyle, and also just to decide what age of dog that you want before considering taking them into your home, and you will have a happier life with them if you take those steps first.
Thank you, Kaylee. Now, if I can ask the timer for 1 minute for the evaluation. There's our minute. Our next speaker is Amit. He is stepping in for Abby, who had an emergency, just so everybody knows, hopefully a member of family that had to go in. Our thoughts that everything turns out okay. But anyway, we have Amit come step up. His is working on his project number 6 in the CC manual. It is, the title is Fluctuating Options in My Life, and he has asked for 6 to 8 minutes.
So it was February 1993. I was planning to come to US when my first child was born, my son. So I get this piece of advice from my uncle. He says, how can you go to US? Your son has just been born. You won't have any help. Your wife is a doctor, she'll probably find a job. How can you do that? You got me confused. And then I go down and meet my friend in the hospital. He said, are you crazy? You're going to turn this offer down from University of Minnesota? You will never get this option again. Go. To have a dog or not to buy a dog? Mr. Toastmaster, distinguished guest, Madam Toastmasters, this is in fact one of the most confusing and conflicting dilemmas of our life. We deal with it every day. Kelly just gave a talk to have a dog or not to have a dog. I had to face between, do I go listen to my friends and go, or do I listen to my uncle, Chris, and not go? Both had their points. It was the best of times and the worst of times. To be or not to be. Fortunately for Clint Eastwood, it was good, bad, and ugly. Now we had a third choice. So it got me confused as to thinking, how do we deal with these options all the time? Well, when you start looking at the literature, you come across this big name of Hegel, the German philosopher. I love Hegel. He came up with this term called dialectic. Dialectic is a principle on how you measure and examine two opposite truths or two opposite decisions and use your judgment, a dog or no dog. Use your judgment to come to the truth. I felt exactly like a pendulum. Don't go, go. Don't go, go. I thought these were two emotional responses. Don't go is emotional, to be or not to be. It was the best of times, it's the worst of times. The movies are all on these extreme edges. Who is going to ever see a movie which talks about the center? And yet I realize our life revolves around the center. It needs a lot of energy, I found out. Unlike what the pendulum does, it tries to flick you from one place to another. So what Hegel said in his thesis was, you're going to have this all the time. You're going to have a thesis. You're going to have the opposite called antithesis. And the center is synthesis. When you capture both the ends. Got me thinking, how do I deal with my friend, with my uncle, and how do I want to go? I badly wanted to go to America without knowing all the implications. I didn't have the sense or sensibility to look at all the different options which Katie talked about. Not that I wanted to have a dog in America. But we go to America. Got me thinking. Then I started looking at Hegel's, how would Hegel, who came up with these options, how would he deal with this problem? He came up with 5 solutions. And I'm going to go about how coming to America helped. First question was, I'm not wanting you to see this, is what is the question? To go or not to go? To go to America or not to go to America? Second thing was, what is the principal objection to the question? The third thing was that what is the argument in favor of the question that you want to go? The fourth question was, how do you determine the question after you weigh all the evidence? And the fifth was, how do you reply to each of the questions? So what was the question in my case? I was qualified, I was stuck neck deep in a very red tape loop. My career was not going anywhere. I found myself neck deep in slum. I pulled my bald head off with a crane. I was stuck. That was the question. Do I get stuck or do I get unstuck? I loved my uncle. But I loved my friend too. What do I do? What was the principal objections to the question of going to America? Who is going to take care of the baby? My son was happy. He's a 3rd year in Northwestern now. He says, Dad, I love you, man. Bring me to America. I'm all having fun in Evansville. I said, oh yeah, I'm writing the checks. But it was not only about my son. Oh, I'm going to leave my mother. I'm going to leave all the culture. I'm going to leave my aunts and uncles. Some of them didn't even feel to say hello when I was there. But I'm going to lose all these things. And I'm going to be in a culture which I don't know. All I knew was John Wayne. And I knew about Clint Eastwood. That was my idea about America those days. The argument in favor of the question which I had was, I am qualified, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm stuck here. If I stay here, I'll have a nanny for my son. I'll have a wonderful life with my mother. And my mother said, yes, son, you will have all of that, but you will be miserable. I know you. you'd be crabby, you'd be blaming me for every single thing. Go! I'll buy the ticket for you, go! So when we weighed the evidence, not by Hegel's standard, by my mother's standard, here are the options. Unknown, America, unknown, completely unknown. Guys have just gone into the ship and gone to this America. If those people who went in the fancy boat, what was that called, Mayflower, without understanding go, why can't I take Northwest Airlines and go? Even though I didn't know about anything. My salary was $25,000 in University of Minnesota. The guy in McDonald's earns more than that. And here was the option of nice, peaceful life. Going, coming, going, coming. Going to with a scooter, working, coming back home, staying grumpy at home with my mother and talking. Miserable! So when we weighed all the evidence, I replied all the questions. Stay in India, I eat my mother's food, I feel very good, I go and visit all the temples, I feel miserable! Or going to America, I don't know whether I'll meet John Wayne by the time he probably was not even there. I see a lot of English movies, but I get something which I'll never get, a hope. I get to meet things and do things which I would never have dreamt of. So that was the synthesis. And I took both of them, it came to the center. So fellow Toastmasters, you are going to go through this dilemma. To be, not to be, to have a dog, not to have a dog, to go to Ghosh, not to go to Ghosh as a doctor. Weigh all the options, which you do. And thank Hegel for it.
I have the strongest urge to try and give you some Duke or some, do you feel lucky punk, but I just can't compete with your speeches, so I'm just going to ask for 1 minute for the evaluations instead. Speaker is, and her project is number 8 from the CC manual. The objective is to persuade with power. Her speech title is How to Prioritize When Everything is Important. She is asked for 5 to 7 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. After hearing the past 2 speeches, I realize life is all about choices. Do I get a dog or do I not get a dog? Do I go to America? Do I stay home and have my baby taken care of? My life recently has been like this. Juggling balls and not knowing what choices to make. And feeling like I'm failing at everything. As some of you may know, I have experienced a rather difficult, I had a really difficult spring and summer. And in that, I've come to realize that we need to prioritize our life, and that's really what I'd like to share with you today. This quote here, we live and we die by the clock, that's all we have. Sometimes that quote taken from the movie Castaway by Chuck Nolan, if you've ever seen that. It's something that I've been feeling lately, that I'm burning the clock, and I'm working till 7 o'clock every night, putting in 12-hour days just to catch up, working that rat race, and it's been very difficult, leaving me to feel like this. This is what stress feels like in my world. With personal loss of family members, my daughter moving back home at the same time, reorganizing my home to fit her in, and then moving home belongings from my parents' home. It's been very chaotic and confusing, and then on top of that, I missed a lot of work, and getting 100 emails a day, and then 500 emails, 600 emails behind, and it's pressure, right? Can you feel it? Today, I'd like to go over some tips for you that you might also need in your life and how to change your priorities. The first thing I would recommend is that you ask yourself, is everything important? What is the most important thing? For myself, I identified that it's family, it's God. Work is important, but not as important as those things. My schoolwork is important. So in keeping my focus on what the priorities are, I was able to just kind of put things in perspective, if you will. From that, the first thing that I undertook was to get organized. Now there's many different ways you can get organized. I found this program in particular was kind of fun. It's called Toodle-Doo. It's a web-based program that you can enter in your tasks, and you can prioritize them according to what you need to do first. You can sort by priority. You can categorize them. It was really fun, so I started plugging things into that. If you don't want to use that, you can use a personal pocket calendar. You can use a card filer, what we used to call a tickler file. You could use Outlook calendar and tasks. There's many varieties of options available. But the first thing is get organized. Find a personal system that works for you. Put everything that's in your head, out of your head, and into that system. It's kind of like making a list, only instead we're making tasks. Just do it and do it quickly. Get it over with. Another point that is important in determining your priorities is this holy trinity of time, cost, and scope. Well, what do we mean by that? Time, that's how much time it takes to do X, Y, or Z. Cost, what does it cost? Maybe the cost is my salary. Maybe it's the cost of hiring a housekeeper to help me keep up. Or maybe it's the cost of resources that I need to do my job. And the scope. So what is the scope of the problem or the project or the thing that I need to have done? The scope being, in some cases, a building that needs to be built for Mayo Clinic. That's a huge scope, but we need to break it down into tasks. So for everything, if someone heaps on more work to you, that's scope, but insists that you finish in the same amount of time as you are doing your other work, that's time. The cost may be that you may need to hire more resources to get the job done, just to put things in perspective for you. We do need to stop the all or nothing thinking of, I have to get everything done. It all has to be done by Friday. No, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you ask your boss, I have this to do, and I have this to do. Which is more important to you? If I get this done, I could do this one later. So there's a balancing act. Or maybe it's you say to your children, if we want to have a family fun day on Saturday, you want to go to a movie, then we need to get the dishes done, and we need to get the floor mopped first. Can you help me? So you're sharing the scope and the time and the resources with your family members. In conclusion, I'd like to say there's a lot more to life than juggling balls. Life is important. Our priorities are important. I would like to help you get there too. by recognizing what is important, getting organized, and deciding what your priorities need to be based on the scope of the Holy Trinity. So you can maybe go from this to a stress-free life.
All right, timer, if you could give us 1 minute for evaluation. Okay, there is our minute. Thank you, Dan. I think I might have to check out that, is it Toodle-doo? Toodle-doo. Toodle-doo. I think that sounds like one more option to try and get my own life organized. We have time for a couple of table topics, and I would like to introduce Amy as our topic master.